In this class, we will be talking about how to score good in subjective questions. Now, most of the students, even if they know a lot of information, they are not able to score pretty good marks in subjective papers. The only reason being the problem with the presentation. So now we will be learning good techniques on how to present the information that you have to score good in subjective papers. Now, you must be wondering how come this diagram help in understanding how to score better in subjective examinations. But consider yourselves to be a judge of a competition for silent decoration. There are two students, A and B, who are presenting their ideas. Now, whom do you think you would give more marks? I assume most of you would land up with an answer, student D. The only reason being, the ingredients remain the same, but the presentation differs. So, the story starts with presentation and ends with presentation as far as subjective questions are considered. So, similarly, you have a fruit salad. So, you have a salad being cut in a bowl and a nicely decorated chick with the fruit salad. So, definitely you will go for this. In this case, it appears to be much more lively as compared to this. So, similarly is the case with subjective questions. Now, there can be a case where a question is asked and say board examinations or UPSC examinations or any other examinations, you have kind of question. You and your friend are preparing together. One of you score or land up with 50%, other land up with 65%, and then you wonder how come this happened. This was all because of good presentation methods. So we'll be understanding how to work around this. Now, most of the questions in subjective examination are starting with some direction words. So we must be very clear about what to write in what kind of direction words if the question is given for. So for example, if the question says compare two phenomena, we have to write the similarities as well as the differences. Okay. Now most of the students, what they do is, if there is a kind of similarity or difference asked in the question paper, they will start writing it. Concept A differs from B because A is this and B is this. Rather than presenting this in the same way, you can form a table and say the differences between A and B based on certain points that you consider are important are so, and the similarities on these points between A and B are same. So, rather than presenting your information in much more theoretical manner or direct manner, you can make it in a tabular fashion. So, that is one idea here. Then when you are asked to contrast, you are supposed to write down the differences. Criticize means you are trying to find out whether a topic has, what are the pros and the cons of a topic, I can say. So, plus and the minus. So, pros and the cons of any topic would be covered under criticism, or if you are asked to criticize something. When you are asked to defend something, you are supposed that you put your viewpoint and you try to prove that viewpoint. So, like a theorem in maths. Okay. So, you are trying to defend yourself in that view. Define means you are trying to provide the literal meaning or the applicative meaning. Describe means you are explaining the concept, so you are providing the meaning along with examples. Then you have discuss and review. So you are providing your own insight about the idea along with what is given or the theoretical concepts. When you are asked to distinguish, it supposes that you are trying to write down the differences. You are trying to say why A differs from B. When you are asked to evaluate, you have your opinion that is added to it. So along with that, you mention the advantages and disadvantages of certain thing. So that is under evaluation that we cover. The next is explain and show. So you are directly explaining the fact. Then illustrate. Illustrate means you are explaining the fact with certain examples. And it's much better that if you put out kind of diagrammatic explanations if you can for illustration. Justify again means you are trying to prove your point. Name, list, tell or enumerate means it's usually asking to write down in points or numbers. So it's kind of listing down what you know. Proving again means you are trying to stick to a point, you are trying to explain your point and you are trying to say why you consider this as a correct option. Summarize and outline, that means you have, for example, Pressy writing. So you have a whole set of information that is given, out of which within the given word limit you have to scrutinize the most important information. And finally trace. Trace means you are trying to give a kind of background information or a kind of outline information to understand the concept, and along with that, if it is a kind of concept which requires historical background, you are trying to put the chronological order. So this happened, then this happened, and then this happened. So that's a kind of tracing the phenomena. So these are some of the direction words that are usually given before the question. So these help you to explain in a given set of example or a given manner. Now it's very important to look where you lead. So basically you must be very clear about what kind of direction word is asked and whether you are putting in the correct approach or not. Because if something is asked and you are trying to explain something else, that won't make a sense. For example, if there is a question that asks to write down a theory, you must start with the aim of the theory, then you must jot down the assumptions, the underlying assumptions, then the core of the theory or the message of the theory, any exceptions if possible, advantages, disadvantages of the theory, and finally you can mention the criticism or further improvements by other researchers. So this is a format. If a student comes up with a question on theory, on any theory that he is trying to explain, and if he writes down these in certain manner, if I am an examiner per se, I would give a very good marks, because I can assume that the student has a clear idea about what the theory is, because the student knows the aims, assumptions, theory, exceptions, advantages, disadvantages and criticisms and further researches if any. Okay, so this is a brief idea about how to start. Now whenever you are trying to emphasize any specific thing, you can either underline it. If you have a good highlighter, colored highlighter, you can just highlight the main topic. But make sure some of the copies do not have a good quality paper. So if you are using a highlighter, make sure it's not going on the back side of the paper. The next is ideas. The most important thing is what is the core of the idea or the core message. So if you are good at writing, that does not mean you keep on writing anything and everything. Okay? The most important thing is the core message. So you must be very clear about what is the most important thing that you need to answer for that question, and that must be written either in inverted commas or either highlighted, underlined or in italics or all caps. So these are some of the ways you can write the answer. So if you are writing everything in running, you can just capitalize each letter and highlight it. So there are various ways of highlighting. And another thing is, where there is a will, there is a way. That means if you have some interesting message, you must convey it. So try to introduce as much creativity as you can while answering subjective questions, because consider that most of the students who are appearing for a single examination in which you are sitting have an equivalent knowledge to you, and you can only make a leap if you have a good way of creativity, or if you are able to pursue your ideas in a certain manner. Now, a very important thing is if I go into an elevator and you have a kind of buttons which are arranged here in the lift, so it's all haphazard, and if I need to go on to the 5th floor, I am all confused. So what is important is you must maintain a coherent fashion. So if this was the buttons in the lift, I could have easily understood 5 would be here. But since this is all jumbled up, I need to put in much more energy. So what you are trying to do here is you are trying to increase the workload of examiner. So if the examiner's workload is increased, he is sure to give you less marks. So make sure that you are decreasing examiner's load and you are doing much of the content by yourselves. So content flow and fluency is very important. Now recording the information is very important. For example, even if you are studying, you have a bulk of books around you. But you try to understand what information is useful and what is not. Similarly, when you are presenting it in your examination copy, it should be very clear whether this information is useful or not. So just before writing down, just ask yourself, do I need this information? How will I use this information? So if you have these two questions in mind, you will definitely try to answer the question in a very much systematic manner. For some examinations specifically, there is word limit that is prescribed. So try to stick to the word limit and not exceed the word limit. Then what to include? Sometimes you have a lot of information that you have read and you might remember some good ideas or some good things that have been written in certain things. So for that, I usually suggest that you mark that example with proper annotations. For example, if there is a question on GNP or per capita income, and if I have recently gone through an article of Economic Times and I know that fact, I can write down that fact and mention Economic Times February 2016. This edition was the concept published. Okay, so that would prove two things. First of all, I have updated knowledge. Second, I have interest in my field. And thirdly, I am dedicated to the subject. So if the examiner gets an idea about these three things, the examiner is sure to provide you with good numbers as compared to other candidates. So you can provide some kind of first-hand information, books and journals, or any personal communication that you feel. It's important that you don't just summarize but analyze. So rather than saying economic development and policy actions are required for women empowerment, you can just analyze it and explain why you think so. So when you are trying to analyze something, you are trying to bring in your own ideas, and that is where you supersede with the other candidates who are appearing for the same examination, because 90% of the students would write down the summary, but there would be only 10% of the students who would jot down their own ideas or analyze the concept in detail. So that is very important. Try to analyze and do not summarize. Think outside the box, that is, enhance your creativity as much as you can. So try to bring in new ideas. So if there is a concept that can be divided into two types. For example, if I am talking about classification of living organisms, I can classify those as plants, plant kingdom or animal kingdom. So rather than just mentioning one is plant kingdom, two is animal kingdom, I can just draw a flowchart. I can say living organisms can be demarcated into two sections, that is plants and animals, and then I can do a further classification. So this kind of flowchart would provide examiner an instant idea that the student is well aware of this concept and he won't be even reading whole of the material that you are providing. So even by looking at this, he will get an idea that you know the subject or the concept thoroughly. So that is something that will help you make a difference. Next is, pictures speak better than words. So if you are mentioning somewhere Rajasthan is the state of India and you are trying to write something about Rajasthan, you can just do a quick mapping. So what you can do is you can just draw, if you are not able to draw the complete map of India, just draw the lower section, and on this region you can mark this as the region of the state of Rajasthan. and this would give an examiner the idea that you know not only about the concept or the issues related to Rajasthan, but you also have an idea as to its spatial aspects or the locational aspects, and you are interested not only in the theory but also in the practical aspects of that area. So picturization usually gives a good impression to the examiner. Examples are very crucial. For example, if you are asked to write an article on sex ratio or gender gap, so most of the students would write a general article, the sex ratio is increasing or decreasing, or this has been a trend through the past year. What I suggest is moving a step forward rather than just mentioning that, refer to the extreme cases. So you can compare Kerala to Haryana, the state with highest sex ratio and with the lowest sex ratio. So that would give you an idea why certain states are leading, where females are leading, and where certain states female feticide is predominant. So try to refer to extreme data, then try to include census data. If possible, include the recent census data. So I could say 2011 should be included. If you have a knowledge, or if you are good at memorizing facts, and if you have knowledge over the previous years, you can say 1951, 61, 71, 81 and 91. You can just quickly depict the sex ratio by chart, whatever it is. You can draw the values of the sex ratio on chart. So these are some of the techniques that you can apply. So examples, as I said, are very, very crucial. You can take examples from history. So if there are some questions on universal theme, you can include ideas from, say, nuclear holocaust, World War I, World War II, independence movement, impact of Britishers on development of Indian economy, or something like that. So try to include more ideas. If there is something that is happened in the recent about similar to that concept that has been asked in the question, definitely incorporate it. That would give you a very good lead as compared to other students, specifically for UPSC aspirants. So you have, for example, disturbance in Syria. If there is a question on international relations and there is some disturbance of Syria that is going on, just try to mention it in the question itself. Then try to jot down your personal experiences. Try not to go very far under the personal experiences or very extreme circumstances, but try to relate your experience to the prompt that has been asked in the question. So that would make the answer much more unique as compared to others. Now we will be discussing 6 common errors that students do while solving subjective questions. The first is answer it with a wrong list or wrong concept. First of all, if the theory is asked on, say, development of or women empowerment, a student won't be able to understand the word empowerment itself. So what they will do is they will focus on a wrong idea, okay, and they will not only discuss what is women empowerment, they will discuss something different. They might talk about some reformers or something which is not related very much to the concept. So wrong listing or wrong ideas is the first common error. So if you are asked about women empowerment, try to mention as much as you can about women empowerment. You can, at the end, you can just mention these were the reformers who tried to provide a lot of efforts for empowering women, rather than starting with one reformer and mentioning a paragraph about it, starting with second reformer and mentioning a paragraph about it. That won't land you anywhere. Don't write sketchy answers. So completeness is the key. Try to make your answer complete in itself, as if that provides an examiner a view that you have a complete knowledge about this issue. So don't try to just, if I am saying write it pointwise, just don't try to write points in 1 or 2 words, or don't include unnecessary information if you are not aware of that topic. So it's very important that completeness is the key, as I explained how to write the question if there is any theory that has been asked. Not answering the question in the wrong way, so that's again important. Sometimes it happens that there is a key term that is asked in the question and you don't know the meaning. Because you don't know the meaning, you are answering the question totally incorrect. So it's important to either refer to the Hindi, if there is a kind of dual bi-language paper, you can refer to another language. That would give you an idea about what the meaning of the term is. Or if not, try to understand the meaning from the context itself. So it's very important that you know the key terms that those appear in the paper. Try to apply your knowledge to new situations. So you have an idea, try to apply who, where, why, how and when. So that is very important. For example, what can a developing nation like India learn from the recent economic crisis and meltdown faced by the Western economies? So you can jot down an example of say Greece, and you can say how Greece suffered and what all efforts can India do in order to prevent the economic meltdown of the country. So that is something, a kind of innovative idea or your own insight that you are providing to the paper, and that would definitely help you score better. And finally, not leave out any specific part of the question. For example, why sun sets in the west? Sun sets in the west is the question. And then you have another question, where does sun rise? Which direction sun rises? Okay. So what you are doing is you have just answered the first question and you forgot about the second question. So it's very important that you look at question 1 and question 2, the two parts of the question, and you answer the question systematically, first in first paragraph and second in second paragraph. So that would make examiner very clear, that would give a clear impression that you are answering both the questions first of all, you are not leaving any part of the question, and those are very systematic in nature. So these were some of the common errors that students do. The next very important thing is improve your handwriting. For subjective papers, even if you know a lot and your handwriting is not legible, you won't be able to score good marks. So improving handwriting is very important. So for that we suggest try to read a lot and practice a lot of writing. Now what are the important caution or precautions that you must take? Try to break down the things into points. Use pictures or diagrams, as we said. For any diagram you are using, try to mention a caption for it. Try to mention things in proper heading and subheading formats. So this is the top heading, for example, Industrial Revolution, Regions of Industrial Revolution, Impact of Industrial Revolution, Spread of Industrial Revolution. Okay, so what I am trying to do is, Industrial Revolution is my main topic, so that's my heading. I am trying to jot down the subheadings and I am trying to paragraph it further, and then I can write it under points or paragraph, whatever the answer can be. Use colored pen or highlighter, as I said. So if there is a kind of problem with answer copies and you cannot use highlighter nicely, just for the headings you can use a different color, but never use red color, because red pens are usually used by examiners to check the copy. So we suggest that you use either green pens or pink pens. So that would be a good option. Even not pink, purple would be a good option. Okay, and then start with a direct opening that introduces the concept, and towards the end try to make the answer very punchy. You can do it either way. You can start with a punchy beginning and end towards a simple ending. Okay. Now working towards perfection, the only way you can score good was what we discussed now, but for that you need to be very logical and systematic, organized. You must have a good set of ideas in your mind. For that you must be reading on a daily basis. So try to read the editorial of the newspaper daily. Try to develop your own thoughts about various things, so that way you will be able to answer criticism. You must have a good command over knowledge and over grammar and vocabulary that develops with reading. So when you read more, you develop more of vocabulary and better grammar. Try to write as often as you can, specifically for those who are who don't have very good handwritings. And be determined that you can definitely score better in subjective papers. So with this we cover how to write good in subjective questions. We will be covering more chapters and more topics on various subjects in further sessions. You can subscribe to our channel for any further updates. Have a good day ahead.